history of the Barbary macaque and mankind has lasted for millennia and has led to the current situation where they're endangered in their native habitats in northwest Africa and Gibraltar and conserved in zoos and wildlife parks around the world.
They are known as the Barbary ape, but they aren't apes. They are in fact an old world primate. The thing is, the reason why they were thought to be apes is because it appeared that they didn't have a tail. But the fact is they do have a vestigial tail, which is 1.5 to 2 centimeters long, but it's more prominent in males. And actually they did have a tail a very, very long time ago. But evolution decided that it wasn't really needed. So over a period of time, it just shrank and virtually disappeared. Now, being an old world primate, they do have cheek pouches, and also, which is quite interesting, is their cheek pouches are in fact the same size as their stomachs. So they can store a large amount of food in their cheek pouches. They are the only macaque to be found outside of Asia. A very, very long time ago, they were actually found all across Africa and Europe, but sadly, they're only found in Algeria and Morocco now.
Primates evolved around about 65 million years ago, at the end of the dinosaur era. And it's only around about 7 to 5 million years ago where macaques started to evolve in North Africa. They then spread north as the climate got warmer after various ice ages, and even got as far as Norfolk in the Eocene period, which is about 3 million years ago, where macaque skeletons have been found in a Mediterranean habitat which included lions and hippopotamuses. They remained unhindered by mankind for maybe the next 2.5 million years, and then they were found in harmony with man from about 800,000 years ago to 400,000 years ago, when they became extinct, mainly and perhaps because they were being hunted by man. It's not known, though they did linger longer in Europe until the ice ages. The next time we hear about monkeys, and specifically the Barbary macaque, was in the earliest tales of mankind. This was 3000 BC, when Gilgamesh talks of monkeys and talks of the forest protectors. At the same time, the ancient Egyptians were depicting in their hieroglyphs monkeys, but these were baboons. Though we know macaques were known in that area because in Iran, about 3000 BC, we find skeletons of macaques there. The next time we see macaques, when the Phoenicians were importing them for King Solomon 950 BC from what is now Spain, alongside gold, silver and ivory. In the British Isles, the next time we see of the Barbary macaque is in Navan, in an Iron Age fort, where a skull was found in an ancient temple. The Romans and Greeks regarded the macaques as pets and probably heavily predated upon them, depleting the population in North Africa. And we even hear of Barbary macaque skeletons being found in a Roman settlement in Catterick, where they were possibly used as military mascots, and in Dunstable, and found on mosaics and in sculptures. And we can even see them in mosaics in their native lands with tails on, which is very strange indeed. They then see in the Dark Ages, macaques were still being imported from North Africa. And we see in Wroxeter a skeleton there, not so far from the Trentham monkey forest. And through the Dark Ages we have little more information, and the next time we see them in Britain is after the invasion of 1066, when we see depicted in the Bayeux tapestry of William the Conqueror a tailless monkey, a Barbary macaque. His son, Henry I, had a menagerie in a walled palace in Woodstock in Oxfordshire with apes, the Barbary macaque, which led to the Tower of London ultimately. Then throughout the medieval periods, the macaque was an exotic animal for the nobility and kings and queens, though they were also mystique as well. And there's a tale of Castle Carew of a ghostly Barbary ape. And a century later, a pet Barbary ape from the Fitzgerald family rescued their son and was then honoured after that in their coat of arms. Throughout the illuminated manuscript period of 1200, 1300s until the 1500s, we often see a tailless monkey. The earliest depictions are quite crude, but the later ones quite clearly depict a Barbary macaque, and you can see its behaviour even with it hugging its infants. As we move into the age of Enlightenment, 1600s, etc., and the explorers visiting Africas and the Americas and India, we start seeing tailed monkeys being depicted in illustrations. And the Barbary macaque no longer is an exotic animal, something special to be treated, but becomes a popular pet for the common people, and even is a common street scene animal along with the dancing bear. And we see images of it even in magazines and newspapers, but suggesting that the trade was quite heavy through that period from North Africa and maybe even Gibraltar. This then led to a change in their behaviour, the humans' behaviour, and the population probably declining further. Though in Gibraltar, the British colony we were carefully preserving the monkeys, which went down to about 3 animals in the 1800s. In London and England, they were kept in zoos throughout this whole period, and the scientists started regarding them as an animal to study in detail, and which has led today to the animals being protected in zoos and wildlife parks, and an animal that needs to be conserved.
My name is Janelle. I'm one of the animal carers here at Monkey Haven Primate Rescue Centre. We have 2 Barbary macaques. They were part of a much larger group, but obviously over a period of time, the other ones have sadly passed away through illness or injury. We have Yilda and Munya. Yilda was actually an ex-pet, was discovered in a dog crate in Morocco, was confiscated by the AAP, who we work very, very close with. They are an animal charity and shelter based in the Netherlands and Spain. Now, the owner of Yilda did not want to give her up, so it took 4 months of a court process to actually rescue her, where sadly she had to remain in the dog crate. Munya was actually discovered in Brussels, I believe, chained to a bar as part of a cafe. And it was believed that if she served drinks or performed tricks, that she would then be given a cigarette, so she was taught to smoke. So the AAP worked very closely with the group of Barbary macaques. They've been with us, I think, for 11 years now. And like I said, sadly, we do just have Yilda and Munya left, but they are older ladies now, so they do have a very sort of quiet, more relaxed time. And if you've ever observed them, they have very human facial expressions. They communicate very well in terms of their different facial expressions. They're almost very much human-like. Munya can show signs of wanting and sort of needing attention or affection. But Yilda especially, she will come forward, kind of reach her hand out, and she's just wanting a little bit of, a chin rub, a bit of a comfort, a hand stroke, or hold her hand. She obviously just needs that, so we will read the body language, and if she's asking for that, then we will stroke her hand or give her a little bit of a chin rub or squish her little cheeks, but being very mindful that they are obviously a category 1 primate. Our animals here are predominantly on 85% vegetable-based diet because the fruit is so much higher in sugar than they would have in the wild. The Barbary macaques are, again, will eat fruit, so they play a massive role in the ecosystem in terms of seed dispersal and replenishing the forest floor. Captive breeding, yes, it is important. The only reason we have captive breeding is if it's a short-term measure until a long-term thing can be put into place. But ideally, it's about funding the conservation in situ, in its natural habitat, in the wild and national parks, and also it's about funding all of those things and ensuring that these species survive, and about reintroduction programs, which a lot of the larger collections do.
I am Georgia Saunders. This is Woburn Safari. I'm a keeper here on the reserves team, and this is our Barbary macaque troop. We've got 39 macaques that all live here together, that split into about 5 family groups. So we come in and we always health check the monkeys, and they're weighed around every week, every other week, so we know who's not eating and who is. But yeah, we will, so what we'll do to make sure everyone's eating is we'll feed out and then we'll drive away, because some of them are a bit more skittish of us. We'll drive away, and then after a lap or so we'll come back and drive past the spot where we fed, just to see who's at the spot, who's hanging around the edges, and making sure they're all actually eating when they're at the feeding spot. They know that our Land Rovers have food. Obviously he can see it over me. So we have had issues with them trying to get in our trucks in the past. They tend to be pretty good with public cars, obviously. Typically we don't allow people to have their windows open. So every morning we get here at around 8:30. The park opens at 9:30. So at 9:30 we will come in and open up all the gates, and someone will come out and put some seed for them and some slow feeders to keep them occupied. We spread some veg around. We try and scatter feed these guys as much as possible, because if we put the food all in one place, they'll be fighting and the lower ranking monkeys won't be able to get their fill of the food. There's no set routine for when they are fed during the day. They do let us know if they're hungry. They are quite good at letting us know. And they get 3 buckets of seed in the winter, 2 buckets of seed in the summer, and then they get 1 large black bucket, which is a mixture of veg, and they get that every day, regardless of summer or winter. They always have a big bucket of black veg. So unfortunately most of our males, in fact I think all of our males, they won't be breeding males because they're all vasectomized or sterilized in some way. The girls, however, they could breed. So potentially if we lost some of the more aggressive, higher ranking males, we could bring in newer males and we could have them mate with the females and we could have babies. They have been a breeding troop in the past. Like I said, most of them are related, most of them were born here. So it's not entirely unlikely that at some point in the future we would go back to breeding them.
So my name's Matt Lewitt. I'm Park Director at Trenton Monkey Forest in Staffordshire. So it's very unique in the UK. We have 140 free roaming Barbary macaque monkeys, and they are completely free to use 60 acres of forest that we provide them with. So we've now been here for 19 years, so it's our 20th year this year coming. We're actually one of 4 parks. We have 2 in France, 1 in Germany. The origins of the park started in 1969. Between the group, we're roughly at any time 700, 800 odd monkeys, something like that. So yeah, they're a very unique species. There's only about 8,000 of these monkeys around that mark surviving in the wild nowadays. So their population's probably more than halved in kind of 40 odd years. So now they are an endangered species, as classified by the IUCN in 2019. So upgraded, we should say, from vulnerable to endangered at that point. There was an opportunity in the 80s to reintroduce some Barbary macaques back into Morocco. So we nearly totaled 602 reintroductions, one in 1980 and one again in 1986. So even at that time there was an understanding that these primates potentially were in peril. So yeah, there was an opportunity there that the French ownership took advantage of. Individuals that we house here could form the basis of a reintroduction, a repopulation of areas. So although we've just talked about the fact that yes, we provide a lovely day out for people, there is also that side that, genetically speaking, we have the ability to do reintroductions, and from our past experience we know that the monkeys being housed like this means that they can be reintroduced successfully. They can adapt to wild living because that's essentially what they're doing already at Trentham.
Having myself been involved in the field work on the Barbary macaque back in the 1980s for 2 years, and subsequently been involved in expeditions and conservation projects in Morocco, Algeria and Gibraltar, I can see that the population is still in decline. Its conservation is drastically needed still. 40 years ago it was around about 20,000 population. Now it's dropped to 8 to 10,000, partly from habitat loss, partly from depredation by tourists and illegal trade in the animals. So there is an important need of zoos and zoological parks around the world to help them into the future.